I always believed my husband Nathan was the kind of man who lived by his schedule. He was meticulous, predictable in a comforting way, and always kept things simple. We'd been married for almost 13 years, and while things had quieted down over the years, kids, work, routine, I still believed our foundation was solid. Sure, we weren't newlyweds anymore, but I never once doubted his loyalty. That was until the night his work phone rang at midnight. He had always kept a second phone, a company-issued one, and I never gave it much thought. But that night, the screen lit up while he was in the shower, and I caught a glimpse of the caller ID. It didn't say boss or client like I expected. It said Wifey. My heart stopped for a second. My first instinct was that maybe it was some internal joke with a colleague, or a name he gave me on his work phone. But I checked my number. No, I was saved under Melissa, plain and simple. My hands were shaking when I picked up the phone. I hesitated. Should I answer? I didn't. I just stared as the call rang out, and then disappeared. When Nathan came out, I casually mentioned that his phone rang. He looked at the screen, and for the briefest moment, I saw panic flash across his face. "Oh, probably a wrong number," he mumbled, setting the phone aside like it meant nothing. But that moment, that single look, stayed with me. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning with possibilities. What if he was having an affair? What if Wifey wasn't some cute nickname, but an actual other woman who believed she was his wife? The next morning, I made coffee like usual, kissed him goodbye as he left for work, and then did something I never thought I'd do. I pulled out my laptop and started digging. I knew his email passwords, his routines, even the kind of lunch he usually packed. But what I didn't know was where that phone came from, who paid for it, and who else had that number. I started by checking our shared phone plan. The work phone wasn't on it. So it wasn't company issued. It was private. A second phone he'd hidden from me all these years. That was when the pieces started to fall apart. He had another line, another life, and clearly someone on the other end who thought she was his wifey. That one word haunted me. I took a deep breath and told myself I'd find out everything. I wouldn't confront him, not yet. I needed proof. I needed answers. And so I began tracking the calls, checking his location history, and searching for signs. What I found next made my stomach twist in ways I didn't think possible. The next day, while Nathan was at work, I called my sister and asked her to watch the kids for the afternoon. I told her I had errands to run, but in reality, I was planning something I never thought I'd be capable of, spying on my own husband. I drove to his office downtown and parked across the street where I had a clear view of the building's main entrance. His schedule was usually consistent. Arrive at 8:30 a.m., lunch break around noon, leave by 5:30. But that day, I was watching for anything unusual. Around noon, he stepped out in his typical button-down shirt and slacks, carrying the same brown leather briefcase he'd had for years. I watched him walk past a few restaurants, then unexpectedly turn into a small coffee shop 2 blocks away. Curious, I followed on foot a few minutes later. I stood just outside the glass, pretending to check my phone. That's when I saw her. A woman, mid-30s, pretty, dark hair pulled back into a ponytail, was already seated at a corner table. She stood up when Nathan walked in, gave him a smile that looked way too familiar, and then my heart dropped, leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a casual cheek kiss or a friendly peck. It was the kind of kiss that spoke of intimacy, of something long established. I ducked behind a newspaper rack as quickly as I could, trying to catch my breath. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. After a few minutes, I glanced through the window again. They were laughing, holding hands across the table, completely oblivious to the world around them. He looked happy, genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. I took out my phone and snapped a photo. It felt wrong, but I needed proof, not just for confrontation, but because part of me still didn't believe it was real. I stood there, stunned, for over 20 minutes before walking back to my car. My hands were numb on the steering wheel, my mind fogged with betrayal. That night, he came home like nothing had happened. Kissed me on the cheek, asked how the kids were, and raved about some new marketing campaign he was overseeing. I watched him like he was a stranger. I couldn't help but ask about his day, just to see if he'd lie. And of course he did. Same old, he said. Grabbed a quick lunch at the deli, then back to the grind. I nodded, smiling through the ache in my chest. Later, when he went to shower, I looked through his jacket pocket and found a receipt. 2 coffees, 1 sandwich, total of $16.87, from the exact coffee shop I'd followed him to. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that flimsy piece of paper like it was a ticking bomb. That's when I realized this wasn't a fling. This was something deeper, something he was investing time and effort into. He had a second phone. He met her during work hours. He kissed her like she was his wife. But I was his wife. I had been the one holding down the fort, raising the kids, folding his laundry, loving him through all the seasons of life. And yet, he had built something entirely separate, without me. I needed to know who she was. I needed her name, her face, her story. Because the more I saw, the more I started to question. Was I the wife, or just the cover? The next morning, I waited until Nathan left for work, and then started digging. I didn't want to just confront him. I wanted to know exactly who this woman was before I made a move. I remembered the coffee shop and the direction they walked in after they left. So I started there. I returned to the coffee shop with sunglasses and a scarf around my neck like I was someone from a cheap spy movie. I asked the barista casually if they had a loyalty program, pretending I had forgotten my punch card. She handed me a blank one, and I played it cool, asking if a tall guy in his late 30s with dark blonde hair came in often, possibly with a dark-haired woman. She smirked and said, "Oh yeah, Nathan and Amanda. They're here a lot. Cute couple." My stomach turned. Amanda. I finally had a name. I thanked her and walked out, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Nathan and Amanda. Like it was some kind of sitcom pairing. I wanted to scream. I drove home and sat in the car, staring at the steering wheel for what felt like hours. Amanda. I searched his phone records, but his regular phone had no unusual calls or texts. That's when I remembered the second phone. A few weeks earlier, I saw something odd in his nightstand. A charger that didn't fit any of our devices. I brushed it off at the time. But now it clicked. That night, while he was in the shower, I snuck into the garage where he sometimes left his gym bag. I found it tucked under some old blankets. And inside the side pocket was a small black phone. No password. Jackpot. My hands shook as I scrolled through it. Dozens of messages from Amanda. Some innocent, some absolutely not. There were photos. Of them at the park. Of her in bed, wrapped in a sheet. Of Nathan, smiling in a way I hadn't seen him smile in years. He told her he loved her. He called her his piece. He said he was counting down the days. My chest caved in on itself. Counting down the days until what? I scrolled back through the texts. A few weeks ago, he mentioned how tired he was of hiding. He said he was finalizing things. Amanda responded, "I can't wait to wake up next to you every day. I'm ready." My body went cold. Finalizing things. Was he planning to leave me? To take the kids? To disappear with her? I didn't know what finalizing meant, but it didn't sound like reconciliation. It sounded like an exit strategy. I put the phone back exactly how I found it and returned to bed. That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling while Nathan snored softly beside me. How long had he been planning this? How much of my life was built on lies? I thought of the birthdays, the holidays, the vacations where he smiled for family photos while secretly messaging her. Amanda, the woman from the coffee shop. The woman who had my husband's heart, and maybe soon his whole life. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I needed more. I needed to be ready. Because this wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about everything I had built, and what he was trying to steal from me. My marriage. My family. My future. And I wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, I got up early before Nathan even opened his eyes. I stood in the kitchen pretending to make coffee, but all I could think about was how many lies were stacked like a house of cards around me, ready to collapse. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. I needed to get ahead of him before he made whatever move he was finalizing. I called in sick to work and dropped the kids off at school like everything was normal. As soon as I got home, I opened my laptop and started digging into everything: bank accounts, emails, cloud storage, anything I could access without raising suspicion. That's when I noticed something strange in our joint account. A transfer, several actually, going into an account I didn't recognize. Small enough not to trigger a red flag, but frequent. He was siphoning money. Setting up his escape plan, no doubt. I dug deeper. The recipient name wasn't Amanda. It was something generic, like a holding company. But when I Googled it, I found a shell company registered just months earlier. I cross-referenced the address on the registration. It was a P.O. box in a neighboring town. I drove there, again playing my little spy game, and found nothing more than a FedEx store. He was laundering money through a dummy account, which meant one thing: He was serious. He was creating a new life and funding it quietly while I was busy being his wife, his children's mother, his live-in decoy. I went home and logged into our shared calendar, something he rarely used, hoping to find some clue, anything. That's when I saw a future date blocked off, 3 weeks from now. No description. No notes. But marked for the entire day. My gut told me this was it. The day he planned to leave. Or the day he would stage something. Maybe a work trip that ended with him disappearing for good. That night, I couldn't fake it anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. Instead, I smiled. I kissed him goodnight. And when he rolled over and fell asleep, I got back up. I called my sister, someone I could trust. I told her everything. Not because I needed advice, but because I needed a witness. Someone who knew the truth, who could back me up if he tried to turn this around on me. We made a plan. She'd take the kids for a weekend. Say it was a surprise trip so they wouldn't suspect anything. Meanwhile, I'd track his every move. Every message. Every dollar. Every lie. I wasn't just trying to survive this. I was going to flip it. Because Nathan didn't just betray me emotionally. He was building a new life on top of mine, like my existence was just a phase he needed to grow out of. And Amanda, this woman who thought she could slide into my life and steal it, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I was done being polite. I was done waiting. I was going to take my life back, and if that meant blowing his secrets wide open, so be it. He picked the wrong woman to betray. I spent the next few days playing the perfect wife, while inside I was unraveling every thread of Nathan's deception. I mirrored his movements, tracked his phone when I could, and quietly snapped photos of receipts, schedules, and any breadcrumbs he left behind. I kept everything cataloged in a locked folder on my laptop, backed up to a private cloud account he didn't know existed. Meanwhile, I made sure to be sweeter than usual. Extra kisses, home-cooked dinners, even a spontaneous back rub one night. If he noticed I was acting different, he didn't show it. In fact, he seemed relieved. Like he thought I had finally stopped asking questions. That's when I knew he was planning something very soon. One evening, while he was in the shower, I took the opportunity to open his briefcase. Tucked in a hidden pocket I never noticed before was a prepaid phone. Burner. I powered it on and held my breath. No passcode. The messages were chilling. Amanda, did you tell her yet? Nathan, soon. It's almost done. Amanda. I can't wait to fall asleep next to you every night instead of just Wednesdays. Nathan, soon baby. You'll have it all. Just wait. I felt like I was reading a script from a bad soap opera. Except it was my life, my marriage, and my home they were dismantling piece by piece. Every message made my stomach turn, but it also fueled my resolve. He wasn't just having an affair. He was building a reality without me in it. My entire existence had become a temporary inconvenience for him. And Amanda, she didn't just want Nathan. She wanted my house, my family, and my identity. She wanted to erase me. I placed the burner phone exactly where I found it and started printing out everything. Screenshots of the messages, financial transfers, even pictures of Amanda pulled from her social media. I created a binder, something tangible I could use. Insurance. Evidence. A record of what was done to me in case he tried to spin this around. He always was the charming one, the kind who could cry on cue and make people believe he was the victim. Not this time. The weekend I'd arranged with my sister finally arrived. I told Nathan the kids were going on a surprise camping trip. He barely looked up from his phone. Cool, he said. Maybe we can have a quiet weekend for once. He didn't know I already had a babysitter installed at the campsite, my sister's husband, who was ex-military and twice as suspicious as me. They were safe. And now I had time to act. That Saturday night, I followed Nathan after he left the house. He told me he was meeting a friend to watch the game. Instead, he drove straight to a rental property. A small condo across town I never knew existed. He pulled into the driveway like he'd done it 100 times, walked up, and used a key, one that didn't belong to our house. I parked down the street and watched through binoculars. Minutes later, Amanda opened the door wearing one of Nathan's old college sweatshirts. They kissed like it was second nature. He brought a bottle of wine and takeout. They sat on the couch like a cozy couple, like they were rehearsing for a life that didn't include me. My hands trembled, but I kept taking pictures. I filmed short clips. Every laugh, every kiss, every disgusting little moment. It was all going in the folder. Not because I needed revenge. Because I needed the truth on my side. When I finally drove home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on our marital bed and stared at the wedding photo on the dresser. Two smiling idiots who had no idea what was coming. I whispered to myself, "Let's see how charming you are in court, Nathan." The game had officially begun. The following morning, Nathan returned home smelling like takeout and stale wine, claiming he had crashed on his buddy Tom's couch after the game ran late. I smiled, handed him a mug of coffee, and asked, "Did you have fun?" He nodded, completely unaware that I had over 3 hours of footage of him cuddling up with Amanda in their little love nest. I watched him drink that coffee, wondering if he even knew how easy he was to follow. I had used the same tracking app we installed on our kids' phones. He never thought to check his own. That day, I began preparing for the war ahead. I visited a divorce attorney, a woman named Helen who'd been recommended by a friend who went through a brutal custody battle. Helen didn't flinch when I showed her the binder. She flipped through the pages, nodding slowly. "We'll be filing for divorce under fault-based grounds," she said. "Adultery, fraud, and emotional distress. With this amount of evidence, he won't stand a chance in court." She asked if I wanted to go after full custody. I said yes. "Then start preparing the kids," she said. "Not with the truth, not yet. But start building emotional distance. Make them more reliant on you. He doesn't get to be the fun dad anymore." Her words felt cold, but I knew she was right. This wasn't about my heartbreak anymore. This was about protecting my children from the man who had lied to all of us. That evening, I told Nathan I was going to start a weekend wellness group for women, just to get out of the house, find myself again. He barely looked up from his phone. "Sounds great. You do you." I watched the way he smiled down at the screen. "Amanda." "Of course." He couldn't even wait until I left the room. While he was distracted, I hired a private investigator to dig deeper. I wanted to know everything. If Amanda had been involved in any other affairs, if Nathan had other secrets, even financial ones. Within a week, the investigator returned with a stack of documents that made my heart race. Nathan had opened a separate bank account 6 months ago. He'd been transferring small amounts from our joint account into his new one, disguised as business expenses. Over time, it added up to nearly $40,000. He also had been making monthly payments on that rental condo where Amanda now played house. Not only that, but Amanda herself had a history. She'd been sued for alienation of affection by a woman in another state 3 years ago. She'd moved here right after the court ruled against her. My blood boiled. This wasn't just infidelity. This was theft. Emotional and financial betrayal on a scale I couldn't have imagined a year ago. I started moving pieces silently, transferring our family photos and documents into a secure storage unit, closing down joint credit cards, opening new accounts in my name only. I made copies of the kids' birth certificates, passports, medical records. Everything I'd need when I left, and took them with me. The night before I planned to file, Nathan came home whistling, tossed his keys on the counter, and said, "Babe, how do you feel about going to the beach next weekend? Just the two of us." I nearly laughed. "The beach?" I asked, faking surprise. "Yeah," he said. "I found a place. A little cottage. Thought we could reconnect." Reconnect. After everything. He was probably planning to bring me there, make love to me one last time, then tell me he was leaving. Or maybe he was going to have Amanda accidentally show up. Who knows what twisted game he was playing now. But I agreed. "That sounds perfect," I said sweetly. And it would be perfect, because it would be the last trip we ever took together. By the time we came back, his world would be burning. The weekend came, and I found myself sitting in the passenger seat of Nathan's car, watching the road stretch out before me as he drove us toward the beach. He kept trying to make small talk, but I was too focused on what I was about to do. This was the calm before the storm, and the storm was coming fast. I knew that by the end of this weekend, everything would be different. The truth would be out, and Nathan's lies would be exposed. We arrived at the cottage late at night. The waves crashed against the shore, a soothing sound that did nothing to calm the anxiety gnawing my stomach. I couldn't bring myself to sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing Nathan's slow, steady breathing beside me. He was still the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, but now he was a stranger who had betrayed me. I had set everything in motion. I had the divorce papers ready. I had everything I needed to destroy him in court. Proof of his infidelity, his financial deceit, his emotional manipulation. But the hardest part was knowing that this was the end of an era, the end of the life I had built with him. The morning came, and Nathan suggested we take a walk on the beach. I agreed, But I wasn't going to let him distract me anymore. We walked in silence, the ocean breeze ruffling my hair, as I thought about the kids. They didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve the pain I was about to cause them, but I had to do it. I had to show them that they were more important than the man who had shattered our family. As we walked back to the cottage, Nathan turned to me and said, "You know, I've been thinking. Maybe we should go to therapy. I know things have been rough lately, but we can fix it. I can fix it." I stopped walking and looked him straight in the eye. "You've been thinking?" I asked. "You've been thinking about fixing things?" He nodded, clueless. "Yeah, it's just been hard, With everything going on with work, and with us. I want to make it work, Jen. I'm sorry. I've been a terrible husband." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. He was sorry. Sorry for what? For the months of lies? For the betrayal? For the woman he'd been sleeping with behind my back? I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't lie to myself for him. I was done. "Nathan," I said, my voice steady but firm, "I know what you've been doing. I know about Amanda. I know about the condo, the money, the lies. I've known for weeks." His face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. I could see the panic in his eyes as he realized that the web of lies he'd built was unraveling. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "Jen, you're not making sense. What are you saying?" "I'm saying," I continued, "that I know you've been seeing her. I know you've been hiding this from me for months, and I'm done." Nathan stood there, speechless, as I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers. "You can keep the house. You can keep your lies. But I'm taking the kids, Nathan. And I'm leaving." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind howled around us, the waves crashing harder against the shore as if nature itself was echoing the chaos in my heart. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. "Please, Jen," he said, his voice pleading, "don't do this. I'll change. I swear. We can work this out." But I was done listening. "It's too late for that," I said, my voice cold as ice. "It's too late." And with that, I walked away from the man I had once loved, the man who had destroyed everything we had built together. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done with him. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I was exhausted, emotionally drained and numb, but I knew I had made the right decision. Nathan tried to reach out, sending texts, leaving voicemails, even showing up at the house uninvited, but I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. I started the process of moving into a new apartment, packing up my life, and trying to hold it all together for the kids. They didn't deserve any of this. My heart ached for them as I watched their confusion and sadness. They didn't understand why their father wasn't around, why things had changed so suddenly, and it broke me to pieces every time they asked for him. It was hard not to feel guilty, but I reminded myself daily that I was doing what was best for all of us. I knew I couldn't raise them in a broken home full of lies. The lawyer was working on the paperwork, and I had to face the inevitable. Divorce was coming, and with it, the end of everything I had known. Nathan's calls continued, but I ignored them. I couldn't afford to listen to his empty promises anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that his affair wasn't even the worst part. It was the lies, the manipulation, the complete disregard for me and our family. He had no respect for the vows we had made, for the life we had built together. It was all just a game to him. As the weeks went by, I started to feel a strange sense of relief. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long seemed to lift, and for the first time in years, I could breathe freely. I didn't have to constantly worry about his lies or his whereabouts. I didn't have to pretend everything was okay. I was free, but that freedom came at a price. The nights were the hardest. The silence in the house, the empty bed, the absence of his presence. It all reminded me of what I had lost. I missed the man I thought he was, the man I had married. I hated that I had to go through this, that I had to tear apart my family for my own sanity. But deep down, I knew I was making the right choice. Nathan, on the other hand, was not handling it well. The last time he came by, he looked disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, and he barely acknowledged the kids. He just stood there, silent, as I handed him the papers and told him the divorce was final. "I can't believe you're doing this," he said, his voice shaking. "I love you, Jen. I made a mistake, but you can't throw everything away like this." I just shook my head. "It's too late, Nathan," I said softly. "You had your chance, and you blew it. I'm not going to waste any more of my life on you." His face contorted with anger, but there was also something else, something that looked like fear. Fear of losing everything. "You'll regret this," he said, his voice low. "You'll see. You'll regret it." But I didn't say anything back. There was nothing more to say. The damage had been done. I was done. As Nathan walked out, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of triumph. I had stood up for myself. I had found the strength to walk away from a marriage that had never been what I thought it was. I wasn't going to let his lies and deceit define me anymore. I wasn't going to let him destroy me. The first few weeks after the divorce were a whirlwind of emotions. I spent most of my time figuring out how to start over, trying to rebuild my life from scratch. I had always imagined things would be different, that we would grow old together, but now I was facing a new reality, a reality where I had to take care of myself and my kids alone. It wasn't easy. The house felt emptier without Nathan, and the kids missed him, even though they didn't fully understand what had happened. I tried my best to shield them from the pain, but it was impossible to avoid. They would ask questions, little things like, "Why doesn't Daddy come to visit anymore?" Or, "When is he coming home?" And each time it broke my heart a little more. I had to explain to them in the simplest terms that sometimes grown-ups don't stay together, and that it wasn't their fault, that it was just something that had to happen. Meanwhile, Nathan was spiraling. He couldn't accept the fact that I had made the decision to end things. He tried calling me constantly, sending me messages, even showing up at my work and making scenes. It was clear that he hadn't taken the divorce well. But his persistence only made me stronger. The more he tried to reach me, the more I was reminded of why I had to do this. I couldn't keep living in a relationship built on lies and betrayal. I couldn't keep ignoring the fact that he had disrespected me, disrespected our family, and thought he could get away with it. But there was something about seeing him so broken that stirred a strange mix of emotions in me. I felt pity for him, but I didn't feel love. That part of me had died the moment I discovered his affair. I realized then that while I had been hurt, I had also been set free. I had allowed myself to heal, and I wasn't going to let him drag me back into his world of lies. But it wasn't just Nathan I had to worry about. I had to think about the future. I had to think about how to create a life for myself and my kids that wasn't defined by what had happened. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There were days when I felt overwhelmed with the weight of it all. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, when I wondered if I was making the right choices. But every time I looked at my kids, I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew that they deserved a mother who was strong, who wasn't afraid to stand up for herself, who wasn't afraid to make difficult decisions for their well-being. As the weeks turned into months, I began to feel more at peace. The scars were still there, but they were healing. I had moments of joy again, moments where I could look at the future with hope. I started dating again, cautiously, slowly. I wasn't in any rush to get involved with anyone else, but I wanted to experience life outside the shadow of my marriage. It was a strange feeling, but it was also liberating. I didn't have to be afraid anymore. I didn't have to hide. I could be me. And slowly, I started to find pieces of myself that I had lost during the years of being with Nathan. I was rediscovering who I was, and it felt amazing. A year had passed since the divorce, and things had settled into a new normal. Life, while never quite the same, had begun to feel manageable again. I had found a rhythm with my kids, and even though they still missed their father, they were starting to adjust. The house felt more like home now, a place where we could all heal, grow, and feel safe. I had started to go back to school to finish my degree, something I had put off for years while I focused on my family. I had begun to see the world through a new lens, one that wasn't clouded by the betrayal or the hurt. I was finally starting to understand my worth, to realize that I deserved more than what I had settled for in my marriage. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Nathan. He had been quiet for months, giving me space, but now he was reaching out again. "I've been thinking about you," the message said. "I miss you. I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" My heart sank a little. I had been doing so well moving forward, and here he was again, trying to pull me back. I stared at the screen for a long moment, torn between old feelings and the strength I had gained. But then I remembered the pain, the lies, and everything that had led me to this point. I had rebuilt my life. I wasn't the same person I had been when I married Nathan. I had grown. I was stronger. And I wasn't going to let him take that away from me. I blocked his number. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. I had learned that I deserved someone who would love and respect me from the start, someone who wouldn't betray me. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of the past finally lifted. I wasn't holding on to the anger anymore. I wasn't holding on to the hurt. I had let go, and I was free. Free to create a future filled with hope, filled with love, and filled with the kind of peace that only comes when you stop letting the past control your present.